Sort of like.
Good day and welcome. Welcome to NAC TV's Coffee Chat. My name's Lyle Watson and we're pleased to have as our guest, who I don't think needs much of an introduction, but I'd like to welcome and thank our local MP for the Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa constituency, Dan Mazier. Thank you for joining us, Dan, and taking the time to be at Neepawa this afternoon.
It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for making the time.
Yeah, you've had a busy session I'm aware of, and I'm just kind of wondering how the COVID restrictions have affected your day-to-day operations and communications within the House.
Yeah, well, it's 18 months ago it impacted us big time. So March 13th, our world changed as far as operating in Parliament. We had to basically move to a virtual type of setting where we all know what Zoom means now. We didn't even know that the app existed at that point in time.
Yes.
There was severe challenges as far as connectivity and trying to understand what kind of access we could even connect at the very first. But once we got past, I would say probably May, June, as a riding, we started connecting virtually. Everybody was working from home, so that
you were working from home.
Yeah. We switched to in Parliament last year was actually, we didn't really sit as a Parliament. They called it the committee as a whole.
Yep.
So 2 to 3 hours a day, the minister sat there and we just asked virtually, or there was allowed 15 from our caucus allowed to be in the House of Commons at any one point in time. And that's been right till today, actually. So we could ask questions virtually. Basically, there's a picture of me on the end of the screen at the end of the House of Commons. There's 2 screens set up. So you basically, when you take your mic off and you can talk, ask a question of the minister. So that went on. It's not real Parliament. It's just called Committee of the Whole.
Yeah.
So that was till last September. Then we started getting into this, really what a Parliament would work, but virtually.
Yeah.
So same limitations. So once a month, basically, I worked out that I could go to Ottawa and go sit in the House of Commons and speak in there. I missed a couple of, we call them duty days, and I did them virtually versus sitting in the House of Commons just because of the lockdowns.
Yeah.
We had 2 week, I had to come back and I'd have to sit for 2 weeks in the riding, and then plus when Ontario locked down at Christmas and in the dead of the winter, it really wasn't worth it for me to go for the 2 days of sitting in the House and then come and be isolated for 2 weeks. So, and then exposure and all that. So we kind of worked around that. But having said that, I was there 3 times since September to June, and every time it was great. It didn't get old, and we were in full. So we had a regular day in the House of Commons starts about 10 o'clock in the morning, goes to 6 o'clock at night, and then around that there's committees, and I ended up on the Fisheries Committee actually.
Yeah.
This time around. So that was good. I learned a lot about either of our coasts. We didn't get into the inland studies, but I learned a lot about the fishing, just how Department of Fisheries and Oceans works right across this country and how differently it is actually, and the different approaches those communities take. So it's been good, but we've got through it.
Now, summer activities for the local MPs and yourself is a busy time, touring the constituency, attending events and community gatherings.
Yeah.
Well, how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, well, it's great. The timing's really good. I'm double vaccinated. I understand you are as well. So, people are ready to visit. We're still very respectful of when we come into buildings and things like that. But it's so nice. The weather's nice now, so we can actually tour around and get out. So even if normal time, so we're done the House of Commons, it rose, and now this is the time of year, like some people call the barbecue circuit, whatever, parades.
Yeah.
Normally I'd be in that, but it's all about being seen and reconnecting actually with people. I'd be doing this COVID or not COVID, and it's nice to be actually out and able to do these kind of things in person. So that's what I'm doing all summer.
There won't be many community events like the barbecues, the parades and that. There'll be none of that happening this year, probably at this point.
So as an MP instead of a candidate, the last time I sat here, I was still a candidate. I wasn't an MP. So it's now asking more of the conversation, introducing myself. Probably a lot of quite pleasantly surprised people are recognizing me now, and either thanking me or offering words of advice, and that's what this is all about. Like I want to be known as a person that's MP that's approachable, our staff's approachable, and I want to hear like how I'm doing, right? So this is what it's all about. So, and it's a big riding. Riding's the size of Nova Scotia, but I mean we've got a plan for the summer and just moving around and making sure that we're touching as many communities as possible.
So you will get from one end to the other.
Yeah, we're headed we're finishing up in Neepawa today, and then going up to Dauphin next week, and area. I think we're going to end up there, and then week after that up to Swan River, Wellman. And then down the western side of the. So that's just July, and then we'll see what happens in August.
Safe travels over the summer.
Thank you.
Thinking about coming into the recession, the summer recession. In the latter days of Parliament, Liberals and the government were trying to push their last pieces of legislation through, and you wound up with some long days virtually, I understand, and late night, early morning votes, and. How did the Parliament end up, in your opinion, before the recess?
And this is the first time I experienced all this, right? And I had the privilege of being in Ottawa for the last week, so it was good that way. I got to experience it in person, so I got to sit in the House of Commons, and believe it or not, it was okay to sit at 1 o'clock in the morning and do these votes and things like that. But it was, this is a minority Parliament, and normally. Or what you would think Canadians were hoping that a minority parliament, everybody's more accountable, and you got to cooperate a lot more. Well, the Liberal government decided not to really. They prorogued Parliament, which delayed many of the ability. They lacked the ability to actually move their agenda forward when they prorogued that. Everything got reset. And so when we came back in September, all of a sudden they had to push through legislation, because instead of just continuing on and doing the good work, and we could have had a fulsome debate. C10, of course, the freedom of speech, where they were going to go after social media companies, and that was the biggest kind of bill that was brought up the most discussion in that. But they tried to ram it through, and for totally, obviously we disagreed with it, but it wasn't for good reasons at all, and it was taking away the freedom of speech of Canadians, which we obviously voted against, and actually stopped in the Senate, so it didn't even pass there. So that was good. Our delay, I guess some would call it tactics, but the system worked, and it's not passed. So we'll see what happens over the summer.
And just thinking ahead a bit, Dan, you had the experience of introducing your own bill into the House of Commons, Bill 299, regarding the internet companies. Could you just touch on that and the purpose of that bill and the legislation, and how it would impact the constituents in this constituency? So
that was it was one of my priorities. It still is my priorities as far as addressing connectivity in rural Canada and our constituency. And this bill, right now, internet service providers can advertise up to speeds, or theoretical speeds. So they can say, here, Lyle, we're going to offer you 50 megabytes per second. That's what you can get. In the fine print of that contract, it's when it's good for them, not good for you as a user. And that's perfectly legal. That's the way the Act reads right now. That's the way the legislation reads. So we're going to address that. Okay. So now, if you had if a company's, they have to inform the consumer when you're buying this service. Here's what we can. Here's the service we're going to provide to you when you're using it at, say, peak hours in the evening. So when you're going to go have a Zoom conversation with your family in the evening, or watch a movie, here's what you can expect for a level of service. What happens when on broadband, when rural areas everybody starts using it, the internet, there's not enough capacity in the system. If the service provider is oversold into their area, because they want to make money, right? They just slow the whole system down. You might get that service at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's what they're promising you, but that's not when you're using it, right? So this bill is going to address that, to make them accountable. So it levels the playing field as far as information, so the consumer can make an informed decision, and that should enhance competition. And then that helps out the companies. You can help pick and really the marketplace takes over as far as, and the consumer takes over as far as the information as well.
So will you have to reintroduce that bill once Parliament opens or sits again?
No, unless there's an election. So it's one of the first bills to be passed. It was supposed to pass at 5:30 in the afternoon of the last day of sitting, and they got their 31, the budget bill passed, so everybody was happy for the summer. So it's on the docket for one of the first bills, the private members' bills, to be introduced, second reading, when we go back in September.
Dan, in the last session of Parliament, your colleague Larry Maguire brought forth a bill which has been passed, I understand, both in the House of Commons and in the Senate. And you were an avid supporter and spoke in the House on that bill.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share with our viewers what that bill was and how you or why you supported that particular bill that Larry presented?
Yeah, so before the bill was passed, if you had a business and you wanted to sell it to your family member, you were actually taxed at a different rate, at a higher rate than if you sold it to a complete stranger. And this is, so if you can imagine working on your farm all your life, kids go away, they go to school and that, and they want to take over the family farm, and of course you want to have some money so you can have a retirement in that, or a bakery, pick a business, right? Yep. If you sold it to a complete stranger, you're actually taxed at a lower rate than if you were taxed selling it to a family member.
Yep.
So Larry's bill addressed that. And we just found out actually yesterday that the Liberals have decided to block it. It received royal assent, and they basically stopped it and said, no, we're not going to enact it.
Yeah.
It's the first time in Canadian history.
Wow.
So we just found this out in the last 24 hours. So I don't know what's going to become of it. I don't know why they're doing it. We're still trying to figure out what the implications of that is. But that's just how much this government's starting to disregard Parliament, and I think it's a pretty common theme. We're seeing this all the way through this whole session. Is complete disregard for the parliamentary system and the rest of us. So we'll see. This goes far beyond partisan politics. It's just figure they can rule the country in the way they see fit
and do it. Yeah. The other thing that people are concerned about, I know in this constituency, but I think right across Canada, is the cost of living. Housing in particular, gasoline, groceries, everything seems to be going up, and I know you don't have a specific answer of what to do about it, but what are your thoughts on the increases in our cost of living, and how do we as Canadians cope with that?
Well, and we've been asking all the way through this, part of this, what's fueling this whole inflationary cycle is the printing of money, and the Liberal government has decided that their best monetary policy was just throw money at everybody and see what sticks. There's been no wanted outcome of anything. And I talking to business owners here in the last couple of days in Neepawa, what I couldn't get over is like a bigger business, if you had the wherewithal and you had some employees and that, you got more subsidies and more money than if you're a private startup business, a hotel that just happened to take over, you had no history in that. Well, the Liberal government, those programs did not qualify. Those business owners would not qualify because they were starting out business. They bought their business during COVID, they had no history, so they didn't qualify. So there was a bunch of money, record number of debt, $400 billion. We're in deficit spending, and there was no plan for it to go out. They just shoveled it out the door. So what you're seeing is, the problem is there's too many dollars and not enough goods. So for lumber, for example, we've seen it just skyrocket. They can't keep up to the demand because people have money. So what happens? Inflation starts going in. The problem is this is all going to have to be paid for. And so how you slow inflation down is jack interest rates up. And we all remember in the 80s, I just started working. I graduated at a university in 1985, bought my first house. Of course, then we had interest rates of 20% and something like that. At that time, I was 20 years old, 21 years old. I didn't even realize why this was all going on. It was Trudeau, number one, that was at the monetary policy. Same monetary policy, though. They were printing money, thought they could control the money system, and then meanwhile, the world market said, no, I don't think so. You need money to run as a country, and here's the new interest rate. So hang on. We're going to have to address it at some point in time, but we're going to have to get the spending under control. And these programs and this printing of the money is in the defense of looking after Canadians, right? And we have your back.
Yeah.
But it's really hitting seniors, and it's really hitting the people that are just starting out. Someone that doesn't have any assets, you have your house. I have a house, I have land, right? I have assets.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Like, I mean, if interest rates go up, and that, it's those people that are, those entrepreneurs, those people that are trying to get back into the workforce, right? There's the students. Those are the people that are just going to get hammered in the inflation when inflation goes crazy. Yeah. And then businesses, they have less ability because they're trying to pay the interest rates now. They have less ability to hire people. So then there's that happens as well. So and if it's not managed properly, it's going to be really bad. It'll be like the 80s. But if conservatives have a plan, secure our country, we have a 5-point plan that is how to get us back on the track as a country, and I think life will be better.
In terms of the increase in prices of gasoline, carbon tax has been a topic of conversation for some time. Where do you see that carbon tax going, or is it here to stay, or do you have an impact on some control of that carbon tax?
So we did introduce our Aaron leader presented our environmental plan. That there is what's going to happen with the carbon tax. The day you elect a conservative government, the Liberal carbon tax is gone. For 1 year, there'll be a 1-year moratorium. This is the way it's explained to me. And then after that, we'll talk to industry. We're going to address industry. We know we can do better. We know we have put a price on carbon. There is a plan for the consumers. Consumers have always said, well, here, we want to do something, but they've been given no tools. Right now, the Liberal plan is just to tax you. And you'll stop using fuel if you can't afford it. That is the Liberal plan right now. That's how they're going to reduce greenhouse gases. You look at a rural area, we have no other, that plan works great if you have another source of fuel. If you can get it, or if you live downtown somewhere where you have bus service or something like that, or a bicycle, right? Yep. What are you going to do out in Justice, Manitoba, or out in Franklin, right? Then you got to get to Neepawa. You're not going to hop on a bike. You're not going to, battery operated, nothing. Like, you need a car, and 40 below, like, you got to get to, places, right? You got to go see a doctor and stuff like that. So that's the fundamental flaw, and we get a disproportionate part being in rural Canada versus someone in downtown Toronto. So that it'll be gone. The Liberal plan, the Liberal carbon tax will be gone when we elect a Conservative government.
And what about climate change? Do you and your caucus take climate change seriously?
Yes. Yeah, and that's why we introduced that environmental plan. It's out there. It's been compared. So the pundits looked at our plan versus the Liberal plan and said, okay, well, 2030 is a target. A Paris Agreement, which was agreed to by Stephen Harper and a Conservative government, they're equal plans. Different ways of doing it. Liberals are going to do it on your back, on my back, on all the taxpayers' back. We're going to do it through with industry, with consumers, with our trading partners. So it's a true global type of approach, and not just Canada and the taxpayer of Canada paying for government spending. The government, we're putting the control back into the citizens of Canada, and that's basically that's the foundation of our environment plan.
So, and what about the future, in your opinion, of the petroleum industry, like in Alberta, for example? And I know it's out of your jurisdiction, but is there hope for that to come back and see the jobs provided and things happening?
Definitely hope. I think we've got to get the narrative around. We've got to get to a place where we're stop scaring investment away. That's the biggest thing right now. These players want to come to Canada. We have abundant resources, and we're a safe country. We're a secure country. We're stable. So nowhere else in the world does this exist. Like Saudi Arabia, sure, they got lots of oil, but they're not the most stable country in the world, right? So why wouldn't you want to trade with us? But we can't get it out of our country. We can't get it out to the coast. We can't get it across we can't even agree on the pipelines across provinces.
Yeah.
A conservative government, and it's because we're so divided right now. The policies that have been implemented, is when you do a ban, introduce a bill to ban pipelines, it doesn't bode well for the industry. So we will work with the petroleum industry. Can they do better? Can they reduce their carbon footprint? We all can. But we want to be the leader in that and be the beacon of how if you're going to develop oil resources or resources of any type in the world, Canada is the cleanest place and the most secure place to do that. And we should be leading, not lagging and scaring people away.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be an interesting challenge as we go forward, that's for sure, Dan. Another item that's been in the news daily, and it's the residential schools and the unmarked graves we're finding at these sites. What are your thoughts of some of the things that have happened recently on findings of these unmarked graves?
First of all, my heart goes out to all those communities that are impacted and all the people that are impacted, those families. We're seeing a truth that I don't think a lot of people were aware. I think probably rurally we were more aware of it than we knew about it. But I think it's funny, or not funny, but it's interesting to see when Toronto starts reacting, right, or bigger centers that were newcomers even, they don't realize what the history is here. We, as a party, of course, Prime Minister Harper actually initiated the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was, of course, completed in 2015, and there was 94 points in there. 71 through 76 was a top priority for our party, and it still is. And it was recognizing these sites, giving those communities the resources to honor, to heal, and try to deal with the truth around that, right, and reconcile that. That's why we've been talking about points 71 through 76, even in our from 2016 on. Needless to say, that has not been addressed, and this is why we're seeing all this. This is why the frustration of all those communities. They talk, Liberals talk a big game, but there's no action, and I think that's what everybody's really, really frustrated about from those communities, because they, and it's tough. Canada Day, I did a speech, and wishing everybody a happy Canada Day, but we're a great country. We have the best country in the world, and we should be proud of that. Nobody's perfect, no country's perfect, but we as a nation will move forward with this, and we want to do it with the Indigenous groups and everybody in Canada. So everybody needs to be included in this conversation. So
hopefully the path towards truth and reconciliation will continue to grow and get wider.
And it's true reconciliation is like learning, right, and understanding that path. And what they experience, everybody's been impacted differently. You got to figure that out, right? And it's getting to know that history and understanding it, right? So.
And that's the big thing, is the understanding.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to make sure that we learn from it, and we all know it's wrong, what happened there, and especially some of the stories, they're terrible. I had no idea. I was going to school at the time, right? But we can't afford to cancel. There's things like that kind of talking, and I'm not of the opinion at all. We should respect our history, learn from it, and then figure out this path and how we're going to start moving forward on that. So that's
so important. Some speculation, or maybe quite a bit of speculation, on a snap election being called. What's your feeling on that? Is it a possibility? Do you think they would ever call it a snap?
It's funny. I was just reading the news this morning. All the leaders are out amongst the country, trying to rally the troops. And
is that telling us something?
Yeah, they're shoveling money out the door. And of course, they passed this budget, the C-31. So all these programmings, they're re-announcing the programs, right? But here we're in this community, we're in that community, right? And here you're going to get this. Everybody, sort of like being an Oprah Winfrey show, like everybody gets a car, right? So it's politicking 101. Rumors are, call it mid-August, early August for a September election to whatever. I know we're ready. If they drop the writ, we're good to go.
You're ready to go.
Yep, I know our leader, and I think that a lot of everybody's waiting to see what happens with this fourth wave, how the vaccination rates are going across, especially in Ontario and Quebec.
Yep.
Everybody's testing everything right now, but it's, I think they're ready. The polls things aren't going to get any better for the Liberal government. Having said that, really, they don't have to call an election. They can go back in September. We can go for another 2 years. They don't have to call an election, but it will be the Liberal government that's triggering it, not for us right now.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see and how that comes out. Yeah. Well, as usual, the time goes quickly, Dan, and our time is kind of running out on us. I appreciate you joining us today and sharing your thoughts. And do you have any thoughts or suggestions or words of wisdom that you would like to share with our viewers?
Oh, words of wisdom. I guess part of this, doing this for my summer is going to be outreach, being in communities, connecting with people again. If, my door is always open. Please phone me. We've got offices in Dauphin and Minnedosa. Phone first, though. Make sure we're around and stuff like that. But if there is anything, if you have any questions, please, I do want to be known as an MP that's approachable, and it's working so far. But I'm still a rookie until my next election. Then I can't play that card anymore. But it's been great. It's so nice to get out. Like I was saying earlier, last couple of days I've been out in Neepawa, and it's been great. The warm reception I've had in the Neepawa area, and I know all over this riding, it's been really good. So appreciated the encouraging words and all the support I've had in my journey so far.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us today, and with that, I think we will conclude our program, Dan, and I would, on your final note there, I would like to encourage our viewers that if there is any item that you'd like to talk to Dan, our local MP, like he said, phone and make an appointment, get in touch with him. I think he would really appreciate hearing from on whatever item it may be that you have on your mind, you like to hear from the constituents.
Yep.
And
that's the way it works.
Yes, so I encourage everyone to do that if they have something they would like to discuss and suggest to our local MP to get in contact with them. With that, we're going to conclude this edition of Coffee Chat. And again, we thank you for joining us. Thank you for viewing. And until next time, have a good day.